My name is Jason. I am here with my colleague and partner in crime, Matt Carpenter. So Matt, you want to tell us a little bit about you to start, and then I'll come back and we'll kick off?
Sure. So my name is Matt Carpenter. I've been with Veeam a little over 11 years. So I was here from 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, all the kind of fun stuff up to this point. I can tell you right now, the stuff I'm going to show you today is one of the funnest things I've shown in a long time. It's the first time I've been at a conference where we've had 3 products in beta for imminent release, which is pretty fun. So I'll be able to show you all the new stuff from all 3 products today. I am the technical director for Microsoft on the Alliances team, so obviously that's why I'm at Ignite, talking about Microsoft stuff.
There you go. And my name is Jason Buffington. I'm with Veeam for the last 2 years or so. I'm our VP of Solution Strategy, so I work on better together type solutions. I used to be an MVP. I used to be a PM in Microsoft for Windows Server File and Data Protection Manager. Any Data Protection Manager in the? Okay, I'm sorry. Just anyway. So what we're going to talk about today is the 360 view of Veeam solutions. We're going to start off with, by the way, most of today's session is demos. So we're going to spend most of our time talking about actually showing, not actually talking, right? We're going to do some major trends as far as what's driving data protection. We're going to do a brief overview of the Veeam-Microsoft relationship, and then we're going to get nerdy for the rest of the hour. Sound good?
Is that supposed to me?
Yeah, that means that's your part. All right, so first things first, we talk about, so the 2019 data is not out yet, but if you look at what's driving data protection and why people are doing something different than they always have, I used to joke with folks that if we could just all standardize on Windows Server 2003, there'd be no need to have any new backup solutions in play. We would all just be fixed as it was from 16 years ago, but that's not true. Right? And in fact, so when you look at how people are spending money in 2018, we saw that improving backup and recovery was actually the #2 planned spend. Now, that seems really weird until you look at what else people were thinking about doing. They were looking at increasing virtualization. They were looking at private cloud. They were looking at embracing converged infrastructure. Here's the punchline. Every time that you modernize production, you have to modernize protection. So because they're making all those other investments in modernizing other aspects of the data center, each one of those drives an incremental amount of you got to do backup better. And then, of course, everything else is about the cloud, and certainly as we move to the cloud, we're going to see that as well. So that's one of the major drivers is just as you keep modernizing production, you got to modernize protection. The other things that we hear more and more, and this group is mostly IT pros for the most part, and what we hear that you hear from your leadership is there's 2 kinds of drivers. Now, if you look on the top of the screen, you'll find things like they want increasing the reliability, and they want to reduce their costs, they want to increase the speed of recoveries. It used to be, if we did this conference a couple years ago, what you'd see on this slide was actually a lot more around, I need this feature. It's got to work better with Hyper-V or VMware or this cloud or not. We're not hearing folks say, I need this feature. What we're hearing folks talk about is, I need it to work better. I just need it to qualitatively work better. I need reliability, right? I need a little bit more speed, but mostly I just need it to work, right? So those are the major drivers that we hear, and everything else on that slide is about, and I want to use cloud to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about for the majority of the hour. And this is just another way of saying that when we look at what folks are looking for, again, looking for reliability, looking to add cloud to the solution, and everything else kind of waterfalls from there. All right. So those are the drivers. That's what's actually kind of framing up our conversation. When we look at the Veeam-Microsoft relationship, which you've been helming for quite a while, right?
Yep.
Let's talk first about the platform that we use in order to address all the backup and recovery needs within the Microsoft ecosystem. Now, to start with that, most people know Veeam as the backup company. In fact, specifically, most people know us as best for VMware. Right? And for the last 10 to 12 years, if you put Veeam into your environment, it was probably because whatever other crappy backup software you had did not do VMware well. And so you would use us to supplement that. Right? Now, over the last couple years, we found a lot of needs for doing things other than just for VMware. We added Hyper-V. We added APIs to allow us to talk to all the various storage layers that are underneath. We added orchestration to the mix. And the reason for that is because as you really evolve as a backup and more importantly as a recovery product, one of the lessons you learn pretty much off the bat is the one thing you don't want to do during recovery is rely on humans doing steps, because humans do things wrong and humans do things inconsistently. So we added orchestration and workflows so that as you're going through recovery, you'll do the whole thing en masse. Monitoring analytics so you knew how things were going, and then because of all that, now we can actually do all of that not just for VMware that we're still so best at, but also we can do that for other hypervisors like Hyper-V and Nutanix. We can do it for physical boxes, Windows, Linux, and other legacy platforms you still got, and you can kind of start to see the rest of the list come down from there. Anything you want to add as far as how the architecture lays out?
I think it's a lot, man.
It is a lot. There's a lot of icons on that screen. All right. By the way, did I mention I'm fully caffeinated?
Oh, yeah?
There was an espresso stand, and it was free.
Popped it real quick.
So it was awesome. All right, so this is all the different ways that Veeam and Microsoft interact, and we're actually going to break these down over time. But the basic idea, if you look from the bottom, for the few physical boxes that you still have left in the environment, if it's Windows, if it's Linux, there's some other operating systems as well. Yes, you can do that. We're actually going to walk you through direct restore and retention. Certainly, all the hypervisors, we cover those. If you have VMs running in Azure or other clouds, we can protect that data as well using agents. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, SaaS with the premier child being Office 365 and what we do there. All right, we ready to actually start getting into some solution stuff?
We can.
Awesome. All right, so first things first, if you want to talk about where Veeam really adds some fundamental value on top of the Microsoft ecosystem, one of the most important places to start is Office 365. We still get a lot of confusion with folks where they talk about how, hey, you know, it's in the cloud, right? Which means I don't have to back it up anymore. And that is just not true, right? The easiest way to explain this is that when you talk about why you back up, you solve for both resiliency and durability of the service and previous versions. The good news is that as a SaaS-based application, Microsoft and SaaS really has solved for the durability of the service. But then there's still a lot of other things that we complement the Microsoft ecosystem on. So we've got some interesting colored balls on that left-hand side. Should we tear those down and then kick in?
Yeah, why not?
All right. Resiliency, so service resiliencies, again, first and foremost, if my mail doesn't come from Redmond, it's going to come from Dublin, and I don't care where it comes from, right? So it really is a durable service overall. How about legal hold? What are we talking about there?
So for the most part on legal hold, obviously they have the E5, which is great. Where we actually supplement that is really for how quickly you get something back and how easy it is to get it back. Because yes, you have legal hold. Yes, you can have it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. But if you have to restore extremely quickly, that's where we come in. It's really not about, it's kind of about backup, but it's not really about the resiliency. It's how quickly you can get from a situation back up and running. Somebody calls you and says, I need an email, I deleted something. You don't want to go back to the big system and say, okay, I'm going to go back to this, figure it out. And maybe they have a court case or something going on. You can provide it extremely quickly with our product. And that's something I'm going to be demoing for you today.
Yeah, the other part is remember that the only people that get the legal hold functionality are those folks with an E5 subscription. So if you have anything less than that, the meta point, well, let's go through the rest of them. Operational backups and recoveries. One of the most important things that I hope you take away if you're making notes at all, just because you decided to go from servers to services does not absolve you of things like 7-year, 10-year, 15-year retention of different kinds of data that's there. So anything around operational recovery where, yes, it replicates in real time and all the copies are synced, but that means if I delete data, if I overwrite data, that is replicated in real time and all the other copies. So all those other reasons why you need previous versioning, that still applies. And so we supplement for that. Along the same lines, just the idea of migration. So you're not going to go from Exchange on a Friday to all Office 365 on a Monday. There's going to be a working flow that comes through that. And in fact, the way that we do backup and recovery, we can actually help with that process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can actually back up the on-prem Exchange servers and the ones in Office 365. As you move those over to Office 365, we can make sure we're still backing up the on-prem until those are completely gone. It does take time. I've never seen somebody, maybe you have like 10 boxes, you do a weekend thing, say, hey, everybody.
I moved my family over a weekend. That was cool. All three of us.
All three of you?
Absolutely.
Impressive.
Yeah, the other cool thing about that, by the way, is I was on a plane on the way over to Ignite, and I heard these folks talking about, hey, now that we moved to Office 365, who's in charge of Exchange Online, and who's in charge of SharePoint? The cool thing with Veeam is that you're actually using the same Exchange recovery tool for your Exchange admin for both the Exchange Online databases as well as the copies that came on-prem. All right, so now let's show it. So here's what you're going to see. You want to unpack this for us?
Yep, so what we actually do now is you've got your on-premise, you've got your in the Office 365. We're going to back those up with Veeam Backup for Office 365. That is going to go into either if you have an on-premise installation of Office 365, a local storage using a JetDB, or what's new in V4, which is one of the most exciting things, is we're going to go directly into Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, or S3 compatible.
Any ideas of any other S3 compatible clouds that you want to mention at a Microsoft conference?
Not particularly right now.
Okay, let's go with that then. And then of course, then from there you can actually recover to wherever else it wants to go, right?
Yep, you can go either, if you do have on-prem stuff where you have to bring it back, you can bring it back there, or you can go right back to either a desktop, you can pull a message, a file, a folder, you can go right back to in place. So if somebody says, I deleted this, you go, okay, well, it's now back now. Because you can go that quickly that you do a send and receive, all of a sudden it just pops back in. You become the hero, everybody rejoices.
Yeah, I sat some other sessions earlier this week and they were talking about, well, we do Exchange, but we don't do SharePoint yet. Or, well, we can recover where it came from, but we can't pull the data out and do anything else with it. This is our upcoming with V4. We've done a lot of different things around this, and arguably it's the robust and the most comprehensive solution out there, wouldn't you say?
Yep, it's robust and comprehensive, but it's also extremely simple to use. I'll show you through the demo in a second. And actually,
how easy is it?
I guess I can show you. It's super easy.
Let's go do that.
All right, I can do this.
So you are number 7. Oh, that's you.
All right, awesome. So what we have here is the Veeam backup. And for the last 10 years, I've said Veeam backup and replication. Now we change the names around. We go from VBA, VBO, VBR, VIO.
Everything has to start with a V, which really limits our options. But in this case, it's the Veeam backup for Microsoft Office 365.
He's a talker. I'm the demo guy.
Marketing.
All right, so what I'm going to show you right now is I'm going to go through the UI. What I'm actually have here is the object storage repository. So I've got Azure Blob. All we've done is we've designated a storage account within Azure Blob, created a container, a folder in that, and said Veeam. We just said go ahead and point this UI at it. So if I actually go add object storage, you can see you pick a name. I'm not going to complete it, so I'll make it simple. There's these other things out here. Don't worry about those. You specify an account that you've already set for, which is basically your key pair. So you have your storage account and that long value that no one can ever memorize. That's why you copy and paste it every time. So you go ahead and add that in. You'll say finish. It adds that in here. Now, once you actually add an organization in, which is as simple as saying, here's the admin email address, it will determine where it is actually at. So we go ahead and we see here, you can see that I've got a backup job running. It goes through and it runs. So we're going to go through all the different accounts for SharePoint, OneDrive, all the email accounts, and make sure we pick all those up. We're going to then dedupe and compress them, put them in there, and throw them into object storage for you. The good part of that is this looks very simple, and it's because it is. Because now if I go ahead and say, I want this, explore. Let's say I want to go ahead and, let's be destructive today. So I got my user guides, because no one reads a manual apparently. Let's see, go ahead and delete those.
It's not really important, right?
No, it's like
I like to delete the file that says do not delete me. I just think that's a trip. Go ahead.
Don't store stuff here. So I've deleted that there. Obviously, this is on my OneDrive account, so I can actually go in, explore OneDrive either from the latest state or I can pick a point in time. I'm going to go ahead and say latest state because that's what I'm missing. So this is going to bring up the Veeam Explorer. We have Explorers for Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive, obviously. I'm going to go ahead and scan that down. You can see my account is sitting right about here. And you can see I do have user guides. So I have a couple options. I can either save the document, save it to a local place, I can send the document, or I can actually restore the document. Now, if it's a newer version or an older version where I really don't need the stuff there anymore, I can go ahead and just overwrite it or keep it. I'm going to go ahead and say overwrite. It's not there anymore. Hardest part of my day is remembering this one. What do you think?
I'm thinking you should put it in Notepad next time.
That's safe. Is that your security system?
No, I just keep the same password on all of them.
Okay. We're in public. I can't say anything.
You can turn off your mic and we can catch up from there.
But there's people here. Okay. Nah, we're good. All right, so what I'm going to do now is do the restore. As you can see, I found it so quickly, did the restore. Once this is done, it's going to sync with the server. I'll be able to go in and actually see those documents. It gives you a summary, what was restored, how it was restored. The good thing is, if you do emails, so while that's actually syncing up, I'm going to go close that. Now, I can do that with anything. So if I have to go to Exchange point in time, I can either do latest available state or go ahead and see a calendar and pick out one day for this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit finish, let that go.
And this is what we were talking about earlier. So for those customers that are already using Veeam to protect on-premise data, the Exchange admin is already used to this perspective. The SharePoint admin, the file admin, they're already used to this workflow. So everything is always presented within the taxonomy of that application owner. The goal is not to try to turn your Exchange and SharePoint admins into rudimentary backup folks, right? They're not that interested, and frankly, Exchange admins are hard to teach. So instead, let's just give them a tool that actually uses Exchange-specific vernacular and let them go from there.
Yep, and you can also see I have my inbox here. I have a lot of Veeam alerts because I have a lot of Veeam products in my lab. I have one of the most backed up labs, I think, in the United States right now because I've got like 18 instances of Veeam backup and replication.
I love that.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty resilient for the most part. So I've got all these things. I can either do a search on it. I can see if it's condition, find a field, pick a category. That's what I'm talking about, finding stuff very quickly. Find something within the email that they need back. I deleted something, but I don't know what it is. That is the worst thing to hear from somebody wanting something from you.
No one in help desk has ever heard, hey, I deleted something, but I forget the name of it.
Yeah, but it kind of sounds like this, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. I just want to show you how easy to browse. If I go back to, let's go right here. You'll see user guides are back, so I guess we can follow the manual this time.
All right. Does that cover us for Office?
I think we're good here.
Awesome. All right, so let me switch you back to, thank you very much.
I got this, don't worry.
You're much more technical than I am. I appreciate you hitting that button.
That's why you have to wear the button-up shirt.
I love that. All right, so we're back in. So now so that's what we're doing with SaaS and stuff that's already in the cloud. But let's talk about, most of us here still have data centers, right? And for the foreseeable future, we all are still going to have data centers. So everything that we talked about from a recovery experience, that applies also to workloads that are hosted on raised floor, whether that's Windows or Linux-based, whether that's in a hypervisor, or whether that's in a hosted environment. We talk about how we start using the cloud. One thing that we thought we might share with you, so every year a research firm that we work with goes out and finds out, how are people planning on using the cloud? Now, in 2019, they actually said for the second time actually, the #1 planned use case of data in the cloud is actually going to be around production applications. But if you take a look on the left-hand side of how that tree works, up until about the end of 2017, most folks were saying, I'm not sure I'm ready to run in the cloud yet for production, but I wouldn't mind backing up to it. Right? Or I wouldn't mind doing DR to it. And if you kind of think back about 12 or 13 years, that's about how folks were thinking about virtualization. Back about over a decade ago, I was actually at Microsoft, and I helped write the support KB articles that said, no, you should not run Exchange and SQL inside of a VM. We can't guarantee performance. Right? And so people would say, oh, I'll back up to it instead. And then what people found out over time was, this stuff runs pretty well in a VM. Maybe we could run in production. And that question got answered for cloud in around the 2017-2018 period, where we still see backup and DR as being interesting use case scenarios, but production actually tops that. That said, if you look at the top green line of organizations that are either planning on using the cloud as a repository or as a DR site, it's still about 3 out of 5 organizations, right? 3 out of 5 say the first thing they're going to use the cloud for, at least one of the major use cases, is simply around recovery behavior. So we're going to talk now about complementing on-prem data center data protection with cloud-based infrastructure. And to do that, the most easiest way to do that is just to start using Azure Blob Storage as a retention tier within a Veeam environment. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here's some examples. You want to unpack how these, what we're talking about from different kinds of repositories? And
Yep,
we'll go from
absolutely. So when it comes down to Veeam backup and replication, it's pretty simple. You got something you want to back up, somewhere you want to back it up to, and a time frame you want to back that up with.
Got it.
You got that?
I do.
Okay. Well, I know it's getting deep for you, buddy. All right, so let's go to deduplication storage appliances. So we support Dell EMC, Data Domain, Exagrids, Store Once, Quantum DXi. We also do object storage, so we do S3 compatible, something, Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, and the other guy.
And the other guy. All right. So again, what we're going to do here is we're simply defining where that data is going to go to, and then we're going to start stitching it all together in a seamless way.
Absolutely. So when we actually stitch it together, we're looking at, I add a repository. This is it could be a C drive with a backups folder on it. So that's my OneDrive. That's our kind of base repository. That's the way I look at it. Then we want to scale that out because what we want to do is layer on the cloud. Obviously, I put it above because everything goes up to the cloud, even though it's in the ground with the wires. Never understood that one. So when we look at it, it goes up to the cloud. So we're actually going to merge those together, and we have performance tier and a capacity tier, meaning that once data starts to age out, it then goes into Azure Blob Storage.
Yep. Now, we talk about this from an architecture perspective, and we don't have a way to do an architecture session at this event, but what you should be thinking about is, for the most part, most of your operational recoveries are going to come from data which is 14 days old, 21 days old, 30 days on the outside, usually 1 or 2 versions behind where you typically are right now. And so we recommend a high-performance tier of storage for that, because that's going to give you that really agile and fast, rapid recovery scenario. But then after about 30 days, 45 on the outside, let's start pushing that out to cheaper and deeper, and whether that is dedupe on-prem or whether that is object-based storage or, heaven forbid, tape, right? There's still a purpose for tape, but somewhere along the way, we got to start doing that onto colder media types along the way. The most exciting things we've been responding to over the last year is really around the capacity tier using S3-based object storage. All right, so here's how we're going to tell them the secret sauce. You should probably explain this one, because I'm just going to make up stuff.
Green, blue.
Green is better.
Dots, stuff.
Stuff.
All right, so what we're going to do is, in our on-prem VBK file, we have metadata and then data that sits under that. Pretty simple. So when we take that data that sits under that, what we're going to do is actually push the data that's actually your true backup data in the cloud. What we're going to do that is, we're going to do it as 1 megabyte blocks, meaning that I'm going to go one by one and actually put that into the cloud. Now, there's a very specific reason for that. Everybody goes, why aren't you putting the entire backup up there? I want that all right now. And it comes down to one word. You know what that word is? You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, it's called egress.
Egress. Oh, that's right. That's expensive.
Yeah,
Starts
it
with
is.
E also.
So what that means is that if we have an on-prem VBK, and this is why it says 7, 14, 21, 30 days, we're restoring the bulk of our data from something that's like if I store a full VM, it's the OS image, maybe files that are static. But then if I need new data, I don't have to take everything from the cloud, bring it back down. I just have to bring down 1 megabyte block at a time. So if I need a 4 meg file, I'm not bringing down a terabyte, I'm bringing down 4 1 meg blocks. Essentially what we've done is we designed the architecture for this, actually in version 1, our VBK file is the way we designed this, and then apparently we were already cloud ready without knowing we were ready to be ready.
No one told us.
So, but really we just took that format, moved it up to the cloud, and makes it optimized. What's great is that egress charge goes way down and your recoverability goes way up in speed.
There's something else that's really important about this, and that is that these backups are all self-describing, which means it's not like you're just moving some blocks off, but nothing is usable until you pull it all back down again. So that means that your entire production environment, your on-prem data center, your virtual copy that's in the cloud, whatever that happens to be, that can melt or get flooded or whatever. And then from any other place, you can take a virgin copy of Veeam, attach it to this repository, and those backups are now recoverable. So that idea of being self-describing is actually huge from a disaster recovery and resiliency perspective.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to do a slight show of hands here, and we're going to upgrade the server in place, right, from 9.5 to version 10?
Absolutely. So when we look at it, we've got the 9.5 UI right now. So we've got the extended scale backup repository, and then it says move backups when they age out. After 30 days, they're going to move out. This is 9.5 update 4. I'm going to snap my fingers, and we're going to go to 10, hopefully. And that's how easy it is to go from instant backup. So what we're going to do now is
instant upgrade.
I guess instant upgrade.
Love that. New feature. We named it first.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So copy backup jobs to object storage as soon as they are created. So this goes from that tiering mechanism where I said after 30 days, go ahead and move it up there. As soon as you take a backup, it is now going to be in Azure right after that backup. What's great about that is then you have 2 copies almost immediately after you finish this backup job itself. And then when we look at the actual move side of it, what that really means is I have data on-prem and data in object storage. What I'm going to do then is say, I'm actually just going to scrub it. It's not really a move because it's already there, so it's a very eloquent process that we upgraded. When we had 9.5 update 4 out, everybody said, it's great that you're tiering data, but I want it right now in Azure.
Yep.
I can finally say, OK.
Yes. No problem. Yeah, and speaking of finally, I mean, we're so close. The feedback from the beta has been great. It's so close. All right. Last part of this, though, so now you've got these concepts where you've got Office 365, it's already up there, we're going to protect it natively within the cloud. You've got data center-centric environments that you are protecting still on-prem, but we've gone ahead and moved a copy of that over. One of these days, I will get some of the Veeam marketing folks to print some t-shirts for me that say, why BAS when you can DRAS? Right? So instead of bringing that data back before I can actually start acting on that, let's just power it up from there. And then what you'll probably find is it runs pretty well in the cloud. Maybe I want to keep it there. All of that kind of comes together in something that we call cloud mobility. I prefer to call it cloud agility, but that idea of let's actually move those workloads and be part of your migration strategy to actually get that stuff up there. You want to unpack that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've backed it up from a VMware, Hyper-V, physical, AHV, essentially it's in our Veeam repository in our format. We can then just do a direct restore to Azure or Azure Stack. And it happens actually pretty quickly, and it's very simple to do. A lot of times when you're trying to move a workload into Azure, you have to do a lot to that VM. You either export to VHD, create a, actually I'm not going to go through all the technical details, we'll be done in like an hour.
How about you should just show it instead?
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, so what I'm going to go ahead and show you pretty quickly is this is the backup console. I have my backup job D here. What that actually includes is a Windows server on my disk. Let's go ahead and look at that Windows server. So I can tell it's on-prem because cars only drive on-prem. Also, you'll notice it's an evaluation version because it's not my car, I'm just trying it out. Let's go ahead and go to the Columbus Windows VM, right-click it, the Restore to Azure. You can select your subscription, and you pick where you want it to go. Any of the regions are available. That's one of the great things. Next part is let's pick VM size. So I'm going to go ahead and edit. You can see a storage account. Any of the available VM sizes currently in Azure we have here. I want to make this one probably a D2. That makes good sense. Go ahead and hit OK. Go next. And now we can select the resource group. We can either create a new resource group or do an existing one. Now, this one's in Columbus, Ohio. I'm not going to do any jokes on that one right now. So if we go ahead and go Columbus West, basically this car is meant to be out in the west. It's really not good for the wintertime because it's got heat, but it's really kind of a cloth top.
And it's a soft top. Yeah.
I really like that one. So we're going to go ahead and group. If you have an NSG that you've got pre-configured, you can go ahead and use that one. Go ahead and say cancel. It'll create one default with the VM. Let's pick what network we want that to sit on. And the subnet. I'm going to use defaults for these values. The next piece is called Secure Restore. I'll briefly cover this. What this means is we can actually create a siloed off area where you can do an antivirus check on this backup, or you can check for malware or any type of files you need to scrub before you move it in Azure. Because if that's your clean environment, your brand new shiny environment, you don't want to put something bad up there. Go ahead, move it to the cloud, check all your variables, hit finish. The one thing about backups is when you demo them, it's like a cooking show because you guys really don't want to sit here for another 2 hours.
I'd love to sit here for 2 hours and just watch the zeros and ones go across the screen.
It's really just a ticker tape.
Okay.
So what you can see very quickly, we have the log file. It shows you what it's doing. It'll give you speed, estimated time, obviously region, and those are my parameters. So pretty quickly, the mouse is going to go out the other screen. I'm going to flip over, and this VM is going to be right there.
Awesome.
You're a little early.
Love that.
So what I want to show you now is obviously the log file completed. This actually only took about 10 minutes. The way we were pretty optimized in how we upload those. 100 megs restore speed. Now this VM is in Azure. I do want to prove that it is in Azure because I can say it's restored. And maybe
How would you know?
we could probably look in there's a portal.
Okay.
Have you logged into it?
I have not because I'm not that technical. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to log into the portal. Columbus West, that is the VM that I restored up there. Obviously, it's up and running. When we import that, we make sure the Azure agent's on it, all the nice and neat, tidy things. It's on managed disks. Let's go ahead and connect to it. So I still have my car. It's on-prem. Doesn't quite see that fitting. I want to go ahead and make it a hybrid model.
That's hybrid.
It
Okay.
is.
Does that work?
I think so.
Awesome. All right, so that's how we're actually going to get a workload up in the cloud. Now, this is your version of a hybrid Dreamcar. The one on the right is my version of a hybrid Dreamcar because I just want to go deep. But anyway, all right, so that's 2 of the 3. So we've got workloads that have been on-prem. We brought them up to the cloud. But once you've actually done this, not just for a disaster recovery or migration, but now this workload is actually going to live in Azure in a hosted environment. And to do that, we want to complete this picture by actually backing up that data natively. Here's what I want you to take away from this. If you go back 12, 13, 14 years when virtualization first came out, when virtualization first came out and you first started running those VMs inside, instead of physical boxes, the other backup vendors just said, you know, just put an agent inside of the VM, it'll work just fine, right? Just put an agent inside of every VM. No, that's a really bad idea because when you put an agent inside of a physical box, most physical boxes are underutilized. It has extra CPU to spare. It has extra I/O band to spare. And so you don't mind pegging the box while you're doing the backup. VMs are consolidated, right? They're oversubscribed, and so you don't want to do that. There are reasons why around data selectability, but in general, what you'd rather do, and what we started doing over a dozen years ago, is you want to back up those VMs from the outside where the VM is basically just a workload to be protected. This gets you that same kind of functionality where instead of putting an agent inside of each VM, you really want to back it up from the outside. Now, to do that. Explain how we're actually going to go do that, and then let's make it real.
Absolutely. So you've got your cloud instances or your VM sitting in IaaS. They're the IaaS VM sitting in Azure. We're going to go ahead and back those up. And the way we do that is we have kind of a centralized UI. It's web-based. It's going to run in any region and can connect to any other region. What that's going to do, it's going to have what we call workers. Those are going to go out there, and they're actually going to do, basically, if you're not new to Veeam, they're proxies. If you're new to Veeam, they're workers. If you're, I'm not even going to throw that
How about worker proxies? If you're somewhat familiar with Veeam?
Sure.
Okay.
So those workers are actually going to go out and they're actually going to do a snapshot of that IaaS VM and put it into blob storage. Now what's great about that is I have, for example, my console I'll show you guys today is in the central region. I'm actually going to be backing up a VM sitting in the west region, but I'm going to put that in blob storage in the east region. And I'm going to do that for a very specific reason because that word earlier, remember I taught you the new word today?
Uh-huh.
Egress. Yes, we hate egress.
I was going to go with expensive.
Yeah, that too.
Okay.
So when we look at it, I'm putting it over on the east side because when I restore, I actually want to restore in the east, and I don't want to have the egress from the west, which means that all I have to do is I deploy a worker out to the east side, and it goes ahead and looks at the blob storage sitting out there and restores that VM. So we have two ways to do it. We can either manage snapshots, which you ever try to do in Azure. It's not the most clean thing to do most of the time, so we're going to hand it off and take care of that for you, and then we're going to go back it up into a Veeam format. In future releases, that'll be able to be used with our Veeam backup and replication on-prem, and it'll be a whole nice little hybrid thing, just like my car.
Love that. Or my car, maybe.
Mine.
All right, back to you.
Absolutely. So about 11 and a half years ago, I remember demoing Veeam 1.0, Veeam backup and replication 1.0. It was probably in this exact same state, which makes it kind of fun. So this is Veeam backup for Microsoft Azure. When you first log into the UI, you'll see you've got alarms, total instances, protected VM, total policies, total repositories. I need to stop reading the entire UI to everybody.
Yes, yeah, stop doing that.
Okay. So what we're going to do first is we do have instances. So I've got my instances that are sitting in Azure. See, these are all different VMs. I did a state system for some reason. What I can do is go into filter and say, what don't I have protected? So very quickly, I can see I don't have Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Florida, Hawaii, Ohio. I could go through a lot more states, but I'm not going to do that right now.
As long as Texas is protected, that's all I care about.
It's a country, not a state.
Hoorah.
I bet. So I'm going to go into configuration. One of the things I don't have is I don't see the VM I just put up there because those were all in the central region. I don't have any workers over there. So if I don't have any feet on the street, I can't actually see it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go into repositories. And like I said, I'm going to have I have a central right now. I want to have an east, or I want to have a west. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to say east repo. Next, storage account. Let's see, VBA. Apparently, I know left from right. I'll go east. Container. I'm going to go to my backups. Sit next. I can either use an existing folder or create a new one. Let's go ahead and go Veeam. Actually, you know what? This is going to be up there forever. I'm going to go make it JSON and archive it just for you, buddy.
I'm famous.
I know. Just on my repository. You can or cannot enable encryption. It's really up to you on that point. Go ahead and hit summary, finish. Well, you'll notice I didn't actually put in a key pair for the storage account. One of the things we do, not even going to go into that joke either. Man, I'm killing it today. I'm going to go into accounts and say Azure connection. So when I actually look at the Azure connection, it is going to be a service account type. So I can create a service principal that takes care of everything. I give it permissions. I don't have to mess with those things you can't remember anymore. There's no copy and pasting. We just select a repository, you're up and running. It means you can see your entire subscription. One of the other things that I'll show in a bit is we've got this connection type. So I've got one service account here that's running the Azure connection. So in this UI, remember that you only saw one thing here. That's the good part. So we got the repository made, the east repository. We got the workers. When I actually look at my workers, so when I talked about the actual proxies or proxy workers or whatever you said earlier.
Proxy workers.
Okay, that works. I can actually see that I have instances. Now with the proxies or the workers, now I'm really confused. So when I look at the workers, I can go ahead and look at the different workers, and I can select a 1 to 5 to 10 configuration on that. What that means is minimum instances or max instances. When I actually spin up and I have a job that needs to run or restore that needs to happen, it's going to spin up one of our workers. We can either idle them so you have one on ready to go, or we can spin them up very quickly, meaning that if I have 10 VMs, I want 10 workers, I want to do them all in parallel, we can go ahead and dynamically scale that. So one of the things that I love about this is with Veeam backup and replication on-prem and almost every other product out there, you have to set up all your proxies ahead of time. You can't dynamically scale up or down. Now, obviously, with the cloud, we do a lot of fun stuff, and now we can scale them up and down. So you'll see that I have instances that are sitting in here. So I'm going to go back to configuration. Go ahead and, obviously, we're not going into the Aussies right now, but I'm going to go ahead and go into the West US region. Again, min 1, 5, you can go up. You can either use an existing network or create a new network. What I want to do here is I'm going to create a new network, and this is something that's actually going to peer back so we have conversations between the two networks, between Central and West. So on this one, I'm going to say, actually, I'll go with a theme again, Jason West. That's a cool
Doubly
name.
famous now. Cool.
I know a subnet name. I'm going to call it Veeam. Hit OK. And what this is going to do for you, it's going to actually set up the network that is the backup network on the back end when it goes to the west side. Meaning that now Central and West is going to create this network for you automatically, so you don't have to create it ahead of time. But then it's going to do a network peer, so we can actually communicate between Central, West. If I put it in the East, I can go East. Actually, I can network peer across the entire world if I really wanted to. That's a lot of peering.
The sun never goes down on the Jason network.
I bet it doesn't.
All right.
So it's been created. Now we're going to go ahead and you can choose a, actually I'm going to do Columbus. Let's do the Veeam security group. That makes sense. I'm also going to say my Veeam size. So my worker, I can actually scale it up. Do I want it to be an A1, a D2, a D4? Based on how much you're going to actually put on that worker and how much load you're going to put on it, you can select what type of VM type you want to go there. I'm going to go ahead and click OK.
And this is all just part of the initial configuration, just to make sure all the pieces
Just
and parts
getting
work.
everything nice and set up.
And then from that point on, as users start moving workloads from their on-prem data centers into their primary hosted region, everything's just going to be protected from that point on.
Yep, absolutely. So if we look, we've got Jason West. If I go into my instances, you'll see it's now spinning up that instance. So it says my minimum is 1, so I'm going to spin up my worker. This is going to give me my view into the other side of the house. If I go back into, let's go ahead and exit the configuration. I'm going to go into instances. One of the things I want to do here is, let's look at my policies, because obviously I said it's not a different concept. It's what do you want to back up, where do you want to back up to, when do you want to do it.
There you go.
So I'm going to go to my policies, and I'm going to say new policy. Each of these policies is either a snapshot, backup, or can be both. So I'm going to go ahead and say new policy, specify a name, and it's going to be Columbus West. Next, directory. So when I said I had one account earlier, and if you're an MSP in this room, this is going to be very exciting to you. So I put one account in there. If you have CSP tenants or tenants within your subscription that you're servicing, or you have access to their subscriptions, one of the things we can do is we can actually manage it. So now I put in one, and mine's a default, but apparently now I can back up Veeam Software Corp. It's pretty interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and select my default Azure instance. I can pick the regions that I want to specify they're coming from. So in this instance, I can type in West. And that's going to be West US. So I'm going to go ahead and add that, and that's where that Columbus West VM is. Now, all my infrastructure right now was in Central. I've got a worker now sitting out on the west side. I've got a repository on the east side. Yep. Every time I say that, it sounds funny. I'm going to go through and specify my resources. So I can specify all the resources or some of them. I'm actually going to go some of them. So I'm going to go to the virtual machine. Columbus West is now sitting there. Go ahead and add that in. Next. I can exclude resources. Now, when I brought this down before, let me actually go one more back. I did want to show that. I can either add resources by subscriptions, resource groups, tags, or virtual machines. That gives you a lot of flexibility when you're trying to pick what you want to back up and how you want to back it up.
So I love the idea of tags, right? So especially because we know that in many environments, you've got application developers who are spinning up VMs willy-nilly all they want, but the idea of actually just adding a tag that says, this is production, this is live, and that's the only thing you have to do. One of the core behaviors you don't want to do is every time that you do something live in provisioning a workflow, oh, now I have to go and decide to back that up. This becomes a much easier way to do that at scale.
I'm going to put one that's a tag at do not back up, and it'll back it up for you.
Love that.
Cool. Next, exclude resources. Again, you can exclude the VMs from it. Since I selected VMs before, that's all I have available here. Snapshot settings. Like I said before, we can take either backup snapshots of that, or we can just go to blob. So we can kind of do a mixed mode. I prefer doing a mixed mode so I can rapidly go through different versions, but then I still have everything sit in the blob. This is really important when you're trying to do basically cross-region backups, because on my west side, if I have a snapshot I can revert to, I can do it really quickly. If I don't want the egress from the east side and I want to restore in the east, then that's going to be where the blob storage sits. Obviously, we can have a schedule, so we can either do never, which if you set a policy, it doesn't make sense to do never, but we give you the option. Daily at this time, monthly at this time, periodically at this time. I go in the next, we go backup settings. So it's going to be what repository do I want it to go to? Now I'm going to the east repository, which means I'm backing it up in the west, pushing it to the east, no egress, and all my everything sits in the blob, which is really nice. Retention duration, 21 days, months. You can pick that time, and then you can schedule it. Again, you can either do it daily at a time, monthly at a time, or periodically every so many minutes. We have schedulers for months, days, and the actual schedule. Go ahead and do this. This is the fun part.
This is really new. This is something that we talked about on the press announcement on Monday, but if you're taking pictures, this is kind of a cool one to really fixate on. So stop checking your email.
What we're doing here is I always get asked, how much does it cost for me to back something up? From day one of working at Veeam, they said, great, you have a backup product. How much is it going to cost? Well, there's dedupe ratios, there's compression ratios, there's daily churn. There's a lot of factors to go into it. And what's great is that VM, I'm showing you that my snapshots for that retention period are going to basically cost $11. The backup itself, which sits in object storage, is going to cost about $3. The traffic, because I am going from one side to another, that is network traffic. Now that's a one-time, basically this is a monthly cost, by the way. So it is going across the wire over to the other data center. If I'm local, that would be a zero cost. Transaction, that would also be a zero cost. Actually, this transaction is based on our backup itself for the object. So basically monthly to back up this VM, it's $93.58.
Now, it's probably worth mentioning, this is a customer preview, right? So the columns may vary a little bit. There's some customizations that are planned. So some of this is still in flight. But absolutely, this is something to be really excited about.
Next, I'm going to go to settings. So if it does fail, retry. I like that, because if it fails once, go at it again, try it off. So notifications, you saw earlier when I was doing my Exchange mailbox, I have a lot of notifications. I like notifications.
Yep.
I didn't configure it today, so I do not have any notifications.
Okay.
So that was the earlier part. We're cutting it on time, so I want to make sure we go through it. Look at all your settings. Go ahead and hit finish. And now I've got a never executed because it didn't automatically run. But what I can go ahead and let me go back and unclick this. Policies. Go ahead and click that one. I can either disable the job, edit it, remove it, put a priority on it, meaning that if I have workers or I have SLA 1, 2, 3, I can make sure that this VM is higher than every other VM backed up in the infrastructure. Go ahead and start this job. Once it starts running, you're going to see a nice little, here's what's happening. Again, I'm doing a backup and a snapshot, so those two are great. Going into the protected data, that's the fun part. So while that's backing up, I want to show you, let's go to Linux Texas. This one's for you, buddy.
Awesome.
I made it specifically today, right, for you. So I've got points and times. I know when a snapshot is. You can also snapshot a lot more when you back up or vice versa. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to go to the repository demo. I restore. I can do a VM restore, disk restore, and once that's actually completed, I can do an item level restore. Meaning I can go to that item level. That's great. So if I want to move the full VM back into the East region, I am completely available to do that. So you go ahead and say that. I got Linux, Texas. That's pretty nice. Restore original location. Restore with different settings. I can go through and switch subscriptions. So one of the hardest things I've ever realized, and I didn't realize it at first, if I have a VM and I switch my subscription, it's not the easiest thing to do. So all I had to do is back it up in one subscription, restore the other, and it moves all the resource pools, all the resources over for me, and it's done. I wish I had this like 6 months ago.
No doubt.
So I can either go into the Canary Enterprise or my Microsoft Azure. I'm going to go to Canary location. I can go to the east side. Let's go ahead and select it. I can rename it. One of the things, I love making demos. If you've ever tried to create a VM called Redmond Windows or Washington Windows, let's see if it does it today. Oh, it might let me go all the way through this time. If it's a Windows operating system, it says it's been reserved permanently. That's an Azure message. So apparently, they don't like you restoring things with the name Redmond in Windows or Microsoft in Windows.
I hate to break it to you, you misspelled Redmond.
Oh,
That might be why.
Ramond?
Ramond?
It's French.
Love that. All right, we have 2 minutes left.
Good, I have 2 minutes to go.
No, we have one more slide.
Wait, I want to do this once.
Okay.
I can do this. See?
You're basically showing people an Easter egg in our last 2 minutes of, there you go.
Yep, there it is. All right, so all of a sudden we go to the network, you select that, you do the reason, you get your summary, and it's restored back. So now we've configured it, backed it up. We've taken something that's on-prem, moved it in the cloud from the east side, moved it over to the west side, put it in the blob on the east side from the central side. Make sense?
Yeah, I followed you right up until, and now we're going to.
And egress?
So, all right, we good?
I think so.
All right, let's finish off with a couple last things. So we wanted to have a little bit of time for questions. We will take off our mics in just a minute and come down there for those. Before we do that, though, we also do want to make a plug. So this was our only breakout session. About 6 months ago, we did an event called Veeam On, which is our major event for users for the year. In about 2 weeks, we're doing an online version of that. So feel free to take a picture and register for that. Veeam On Virtual is happening on November 20th. It is 20 speakers. Matt and I are both on the docket for that. 24 hours of streamed content for breakout sessions like this in a virtual format. So please feel free to register for that. That is a free conference. Look at all the phones popping up. You know, the other thing we should make sure that we do while this is going on. So the developers working on Veeam Backup for Azure, they have been working nonstop on this for several months. We did a very, very early preview at the Veeam On event before, but we wanted to send a word and say thank you, right? So, so what do you want to say for the video?
I prefer to say thank you, Veeam development. So on three.
On three.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you,
Veeam development. That was
Okay.
really exciting.
That was not.
We still appreciate it.
All right, very good. All right, can you Photoshop in extra voices? Because we'll figure that out. All right. With that, please, if you liked the session today, if you got something useful out of it, please fill out your evals. If you didn't like the session, don't worry, no one reads the evals anyway. So thank you very much, and we'll be around for questions. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks.